another item I picked up at a recent radio rally, or Hamfest if you like. Didn't cost me a lot of money, this one, but nevertheless it's a very interesting item. This is a copy of the book Passport to World Band Radio. It's the 1994 edition. I think it's fair to say even by 1994 shortwave had started to decline slowly, but there was still a lot of activity about on the shortwave bands. Now this publication not only contained frequency listings and time listings for the various shortwave broadcasters, but it also had a lot of interesting radio related articles. We're going to have a quick look at a couple of these articles now, and the first one I caught my eye and I wanted to show you was one here. We'll just skip through some of the ads. I may look at these in a little more depth in a future video, but I wanted to draw your attention to this one. It's the top news shows according to the publication for 1994. So it's got the top 10 here, but just for the sake of being brief, I thought we'd have a look at the 5 out of the 10, the ones that are listed here in the publication. Okay, and the first one they've chosen is the BBC World Service, and that was a program called News Hour. Okay, then we've got, I think next is Radio Canada, The World at 6. Then we've got European Journal by Deutsche Welle, the German broadcaster. We've got a program called Monitor Radio, and that's the World Service of the Christian Science Monitor. And then we've got Dateline, just here, Swiss Radio International. I'll just skip through the nice advert for the Grundig Satellite 700. And the next program we've got is one called International Report from Radio Australia. Now what struck me about these articles was that out of the 5 I've just gone through there, only one broadcaster remains, and that's the BBC World Service. We've lost Radio Canada. Deutsche Welle, I think, is still available on internet radio, but not on shortwave. Christian Science Monitor, that's long gone. Swiss Radio International, similarly, and quite a few years ago, Radio Australia went off the air. So, as regards those programs, only the BBC World Service, the only broadcaster that survives, is BBC World Service. Now, of course, 1994 to me doesn't seem that long ago, but it is 30 years ago, so we can see a lot has changed since this series of articles was written. The next, and probably the most popular section of Passport to World Band Radio, is this section on world band radios themselves. And Passport had reviews of the radios available year on year. There would be an editor's choice, and Passport divided receivers into a number of categories. They have what they call portables, which is, as you'd expect, a portable radio, something that takes batteries, you can carry it around. Tabletops, which would be something like the Drake R8A or the NRD 525s that I have, or the R8B I have. You know, the sort of thing that sits on your desk and stays there. And they've also got a section called portatops. And one of the receivers they classify as a portatop is the low HF 150. And we'll come to that a little bit later. But I'll just have a look through some of the categories and the radios that Passport thought were worthwhile. And you'll see we've got a section here titled Mini Portables, and they've selected the Sangean ATS 606 as the best mini portable. That was selling for $269 in 1994 in the USA. Let's go through and look at a few more. We've got the Panasonic B65. I've got a RF B60, which is very similar radio but without the SSB. That's an editor's choice. The Sony ICF 7600, these are all familiar radios. Another Panasonic, the RFB 45. I'll scan through these other ones because they're not highly rated by Passport. I just draw your attention, you'll have seen a review and a feature of this one, the DAC DMR 3000. And there's the DMR 3000 with the Station Stalker active antenna accessory. I've got both of these. It was only rated 2 stars by Passport. They basically think that the DAC was very insensitive. Not a sensitive shortwave receiver, so that's quite interesting. Now, kind of a bargain price, I guess, even back in '94, $69.90. That was the DAC. So, mid-size portables, you'll see a familiar one here. We've got the Sony ICF 2010, or the 2001D as it was called in the UK. That's got a high rating. We've got the Grundig Satellite 700, Sony SW77, again quite highly rated by Passport, and the Sony's got quite a good article on it there. Quite a familiar looking radio here, the Sangean ATS 803A. Again, that's got quite a good rating from Passport. We'll skip through these analog portables because I want to show you the Porter Top rating. And there's the Porter Top. It's the low HF 150. It's got a 4-star rating, editor's choice from Passport. Around $700 in the US in 1994, so quite an expensive receiver. And the tabletops, probably no great surprises. Here we have the ICOM ICR 9000. A whopping $6,265 in the US, which at the time was £4,080 in the UK, which would be a lot of money now in 2024, but in 1994 it was an awful lot more. So that's quite an incredible price for a receiver. We've got a commercial Japan Radio NRD 93, not really often seen. Low HF 235. And a 5-star rated radio here, editor's choice, the Drake R8. Similar rating for the NRD 535 Japan Radio as well. We can go on to the Kenwood R5000, but cheaper than the other radios. Not cheap by any means, but $1,149 in the US in 1994. That's got a 4.5-star rating. And the ICOM R71, there should be a picture of it over leaf. That's got a 4-star rating, there it is. Okay, and then we've got the low HF 225. And finally on this page we've got the ICOM R72. It's got a 3.5-star rating, so it's not as highly thought of as the earlier radios. That's quite a short look at Passport to World Band Radio 1994 edition. I'll do one more video on this. I think we'll actually look at the listings and the activities on the bands back in 1994 and how it differs from today, how many more shortwave stations there were around. But just as a slight spoiler, you can see that it's boasting that there are schedules from 165 countries within this publication. There's nothing like that number of countries on the air on the shortwave bands today. Just show you the rear cover, which is a series of reviews and comments on the publication itself. And we've got a price of this publication. US it would have been $17.95, Canada $23.50. There isn't a UK price on this, interestingly enough, that I can see. But there it is, Passport to World Band Radio 1994. I hope you found that interesting. A little trip down memory lane for the receivers that they've reviewed. And in the next video, we'll take a look at the listings and just how busy the bands were back in 1994. Thank you for watching.